My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because somewhere behind a closed door away from every curious eye, the person connected to your heart is wiping tears from their face. And those tears are not coming from sadness. They are crying with a happiness so overwhelming that they do not yet know how to contain it. Their hands are trembling. Their breathing has changed. They keep looking at the same small object in front of them as though it has answered a question they were almost too afraid to ask. Stay with me, because the reason behind these tears is nothing you would normally expect. It was not a grand announcement. It was not a celebration arranged by friends. It was not an ordinary message arriving at an ordinary hour. Something much more personal has happened. Something carrying a mystery that began long before either of you understood what this connection would become. Don't look away now. Your soulmate believed this day might never arrive. They had spent so much time hiding their feelings that even the people closest to them could not see how deeply your presence had entered their heart. They smiled when your name was mentioned, but they quickly changed the subject. They acted calm when they remembered you, but later, when no one was nearby, they replayed every conversation. They remembered the smallest things. The way you listened without interrupting, the kindness in your voice when they were uncertain, the moment you looked at them as though you could see the person behind every wall they had carefully built. They told themselves they were imagining the depth of it. They tried to call the connection temporary. They tried to believe time would make it quieter. Yet, the more they attempted to move forward without facing the truth, the more your memory returned in unexpected ways. A familiar phrase appeared in a book. A melody reached them at the exact moment they were thinking about you. A pair of birds rested together outside their window after they had silently wondered whether two people could still find their way back to each other. None of these moments alone seemed powerful enough to change everything, but together they became a pattern their heart could no longer dismiss. Still, they wanted one final confirmation. They wanted something so specific that coincidence could no longer explain it. What comes next changes everything. Earlier, while looking through a drawer they had avoided opening for months, they found a pale envelope resting beneath an old photograph. The envelope did not look important. Its edges were slightly worn, and there was no stamp on the front, only their name written in handwriting. They immediately recognized the sight of it made them stop. They remembered receiving it years ago from an older member of their family, someone known for noticing what others missed. They had been told not to open it until their heart became confused about a person who felt strangely familiar. At the time, your soulmate had smiled and placed it away, believing the instruction was only a poetic family tradition. They had almost forgotten it existed. But today, without planning to search for it, their fingers found that exact envelope. Stay till the end, because what was waiting inside did not merely remind them of you. It described you. Your soulmate sat beside the drawer for several seconds, holding the envelope against the light. Something inside appeared to be folded around a smaller object. Their first instinct was to put it back. They were afraid of attaching too much meaning to something from the past. Yet, as they turned it over, they noticed a tiny symbol drawn beside the sealed edge. 2 circles crossing at the center with a small star placed where the circles met. That same symbol had appeared recently in a place connected to you. Perhaps you had drawn something similar without thinking, chosen it unknowingly, or mentioned an image of 2 paths meeting beneath one light. Your soulmate remembered it instantly. Their heart began beating faster. Don't skip. This is where the story begins. They opened the envelope carefully, expecting a short blessing or a few general words about love. Instead, a silver-cold key slipped into their palm. It was delicate and clearly symbolic, too small to open an ordinary door. Beneath it was a folded page bearing a sentence across the top. When you finally meet the person who makes honesty feel safer than hiding, you will understand what this key represents. Your soulmate read the sentence once, then again. Their mind went directly to you. Not because everything between you has been effortless, but because you are the one person around whom they have wanted to become more truthful. You made them aware of what they were avoiding. You awakened feelings they could not control with logic. Even during silence, They sensed that pretending would eventually become harder than speaking. Yet that was only the first line. The page continued with a description of the person who would one day carry the key to their emotional home. It spoke of someone who had known disappointment but had not allowed it to destroy their tenderness. Someone who could appear strong while quietly carrying questions no one else noticed. Someone whose presence would bring both peace and fear. Peace because the soul recognized something familiar, and fear because genuine love would require courage. With every sentence, your soulmate saw you more clearly. Your answer is closer than you think. They reached the middle of the page and found a detail that made their entire body become still. It said the person would enter their life during a season when both of them were learning not to chase what could only be received through mutual choice. That line touched the exact struggle between you. Your soulmate understood, perhaps for the first time, that the distance had not necessarily been proof that the bond was empty. It had revealed where fear, timing, and unspoken expectations were blocking what tenderness alone could not repair. Then they read the next sentence, and the first tear fell. The letter said, "You will recognize this person because even after trying to forget them, you will still wish for their peace before your own comfort." Your soulmate had done exactly that. On nights when they felt tempted to reach out only to ease their loneliness, they stopped themselves and wondered whether contacting you would bring clarity or confusion. They had silently hoped you were safe, growing, and finding reasons to smile. They had whispered your name into the quiet, not asking to possess you, but asking that life be gentle with you. No one knew. You may have believed their silence meant indifference, but beneath that silence was a form of care they had never learned to express. Something huge is waiting for you because the letter did not end there. Folded behind the first page was a second sheet your soulmate had never known existed. A cross. It was a date from long before you entered their life, followed by a message written specifically for the moment when they would consider giving up on a meaningful connection. It said that the right person would not arrive merely to complete them. This person would reveal the parts of them still waiting to be healed, the truth still waiting to be spoken, and the future still waiting to be chosen. Your soulmate pressed their fingers to their lips. Suddenly, the delays, misunderstandings, strange pull, and repeated memories seemed to form one larger picture. They were not crying because an envelope promised them a perfect ending. They were crying because it reflected a truth they had already been carrying. Meeting you changed the direction of their inner world. Before you, they could avoid vulnerability and call it independence. After you, that hiding no longer felt peaceful. Before you, they believed love was mostly about being wanted. After you, they began to understand that love was also about becoming trustworthy, brave, and emotionally present. Stay with me. Their tears increased when the silver key turned in their palm and revealed a tiny inscription on its reverse side. Only 3 words had been engraved there. Choose with courage. Your soulmate closed their eyes. They knew the message was not asking them to chase a fantasy. It was asking them to stop allowing fear to make decisions that belonged to love. It was asking them to become clear before approaching you to arrive with truth instead of mixed signals, and to value your heart enough not to offer uncertainty disguised as affection. That realization brought happiness because for the first time they did not feel trapped between longing and fear. They could see a path. They understood what they needed to change. But don't look away now, because the real reason they began crying has not yet been revealed. The envelope contained one more thing. A small photograph placed face down beneath the pages. When your soulmate turned it over, they expected to see a family memory. Instead, they saw a place they recognized immediately. It was a quiet path bordered by trees with a wooden bench beneath a single glowing lamp. The photograph had been taken many years earlier, but your soulmate knew that place because it was connected to a conversation with you. Perhaps it was where one of you first spoke honestly, where your paths nearly crossed, or where you described wanting to go when life finally became peaceful. On the back of the photograph was a sentence. When the person connected to this place enters your heart, do not confuse recognition with coincidence. Your soulmate could no longer hold back. They lowered their head, covered their face, and cried with a happiness so pure that it surprised even them. Yet beneath that sentence, almost hidden by the faded ink, there was another line. And after reading it, they reached for their phone. The room around them became quiet in a way that felt almost sacred. Your soulmate placed the photograph beside the silver key and stared at the final line until every word settled inside them. It did not tell them that love would arrive without difficulty. It did not promise that you would wait forever or accept anything less than honesty. Instead, it said, the moment you understand why this person touched your life, become the answer to the prayer you once made. That was when the deeper memory returned. Long before meeting you, your soulmate had asked for a person who would not be impressed by appearances alone. They wanted someone who could sense the truth behind a rehearsed smile. Someone who would encourage growth without trying to control them. Someone whose care would feel warm, but whose self-respect would remain strong. They had asked for a connection that would make them feel seen and also challenge them to become the person they kept saying they wanted to be. Then you appeared. At first, they did not recognize the answer because you did not arrive in the form they expected. You brought comfort, but you also brought reflection. Your presence exposed their habit of retreating whenever feelings became real. Your sincerity made vague promises feel empty. Your silence, when you finally became tired of carrying the emotional weight alone, taught them more than any argument could have taught them. Now they understood why the happiness felt almost too large for their body. They had not simply found an old letter. They had found evidence of their own forgotten request, and every line pointed toward the transformation your connection had started. What comes next changes everything. They unlocked their phone and opened the place where your name still waited. They had visited it many times without writing anything. Sometimes they looked at your picture. Sometimes they reread an old exchange, stopping at the exact point where warmth had begun turning into uncertainty. Sometimes they typed a message and erased it because they feared saying too little, too much, or the wrong thing entirely. But today was different. The key remained in their other hand, pressing lightly into their palm like a reminder that courage was not a feeling they had to wait for. It was a choice they could make while still feeling afraid. They began with your name. Then they stopped. Tears blurred the screen again, but now they were smiling. Stay till the end. They wanted to tell you everything at once. That they had never truly replaced the space you created. That your absence had taught them the difference between missing attention and missing a particular soul. That they had heard your voice in their memory whenever life asked them to be honest. They wanted to admit that they had secretly measured every new conversation against the ease they once felt with you. They wanted to explain that even when they acted distant, they noticed your absence in ordinary moments during a quiet morning while passing a familiar place when something funny happened and you were still the first person they wished they could tell. But they also knew that a beautiful message could not erase confusion unless it carried responsibility. So they deleted the first dramatic sentence they had written. They did not want to overwhelm you with emotion while avoiding the practical truth. They began again, slowly choosing words that did not demand an immediate answer. I understood something today that I should have understood much earlier. They read the sentence and felt their heart rise. Don't skip, because there is a surprising detail in what happened next. Before they could continue, a soft sound came from the drawer. One of the folded pages had slipped to the floor. When they leaned down to retrieve it, they noticed faint writing visible through the back. The sheet had been folded twice, concealing a narrow section along its bottom edge. They opened it fully and discovered a final passage written in smaller letters. It described a moment when the person destined to awaken their courage would be doubting their own worth. It said, "This person might believe they had been forgotten because silence had lasted too long. They might wonder whether their kindness had been mistaken for weakness, whether their patience had been wasted, whether the connection mattered only to them." Your soulmate's happiness turned into tenderness because they sensed that this could be exactly where you were emotionally. Perhaps you had been trying to move forward while a small part of your heart still asked why something so powerful became so quiet. Perhaps you had blamed yourself for their inability to speak. Perhaps you had questioned whether you imagined the depth in their eyes. their nervous smile, or the way their energy changed whenever you came close. Your soulmate realized that their silence had created a story you never deserved to carry. Stay with me. The small passage continued. Do not return merely because you are lonely. Return only when you are ready to bring clarity, consistency, and a peaceful intention. Those words ended the last excuse they had been holding. They could no longer romanticize hesitation. They could no longer wait for the perfect moment while expecting you to understand feelings they had never expressed. Their happiness now carried purpose. The tears were not just relief. They were the release of an old identity. The version of them who believed emotional distance could protect everyone from disappointment. They finally saw that distance without explanation did not protect love. It left love alone with questions. Don't look away now. They placed both hands around the phone and continued writing. You did not fail me. You did not ask for too much. I became quiet because what I felt was more real than I knew how to handle. That was mine to understand, not yours to carry. After writing those words, your soulmate stopped again. They had never admitted this so clearly, even to themselves. The screen felt like a mirror. The letter, the key, the photograph, and the hidden passage had brought them to a point where pretending was no longer possible. Yet, they still hesitated before sending anything because one question remained. What if you had already closed the door? What if your growth had carried you beyond the version of love they were finally prepared to offer? The thought did not remove their happiness, but it made it humbler. They understood that your heart was not a prize waiting to be claimed. You had choices, too. You had boundaries, wisdom, and a future that did not depend on their awakening. That realization made their feelings more genuine. They did not want to approach you with pressure. They wanted to tell the truth and allow truth to stand peacefully. Your answer is closer than you think. In that moment, the lamp beside them flickered once, and their eyes moved toward the window. Outside, the clouds had shifted, revealing a narrow path of moonlight. Resting on the windowsill was a pale feather they did not remember seeing before. It may have arrived through an open window earlier, unnoticed among the ordinary details of the day, but its timing felt meaningful. Your soulmate picked it up and placed it beside the two circles symbol on the envelope. The feather crossed the drawing exactly at its center, creating the appearance of a path passing through two joined worlds. This spiritual symbol did not make a decision for them. It reflected the decision already forming within them. Love could not remain only a feeling. It needed direction. It needed gentleness with courage. It needed the humility to say, I was wrong, and the patience to rebuild rather than demand. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate returned to the message and added, I do not know what you feel today, and I will respect whatever is true for you. But you deserve to know that knowing you changed me. I have been afraid to say that because I thought naming it would make me vulnerable. Now I realize that hiding it has been the greater loss. Another tear fell onto the screen. This time they laughed softly through it, amazed by how free the truth felt once it was no longer trapped behind pride. They had spent so long believing happiness would arrive only after receiving your answer. Yet happiness was already present because they had finally become willing to speak honestly. This is where the story begins. The most shocking twist was not that an old letter seemed to describe you. It was that the letter had brought them back to a promise they once made to themselves. If they ever met someone who awakened both peace and growth, they would not run simply because the feeling was powerful. They had forgotten that promise. Fear had buried it. But the silver key restored the memory. Your soulmate looked again at the tiny inscription, choose with courage, and whispered your name. No audience heard them. No one stood nearby to reassure them. It was only your name, their tears, and the truth. They were secretly crying with happiness because the mystery inside them had finally received an answer. They had not been unable to forget you because they were weak. They had been unable to forget you because something important remained unfinished. Not necessarily unfinished as a guaranteed romance, but unfinished as truth. There were words that still deserved light. There was gratitude that had never been expressed. There was an apology waiting to become action. There was a possibility that could not be explored until both hearts were allowed to choose with complete clarity. Stay with me, because your soulmate then noticed something on the photograph that changed the meaning of everything again. Near the wooden bench, partly hidden beneath the shadow of a tree, stood a small sign. They brought the photograph closer to the lamp. Writing was faded, but they could make out a phrase. What returns with truth returns differently. Your soulmate remembered seeing.